Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It is Monday, November 29th, 2021. We are saying goodbye to November, maybe the greatest month of the year. Who knows? But then everyone who is born in whatever month will say that. All right, so we're inching closer and closer to Christmas. We are in a Christmas mood, and trust you're waking up this morning. There's some showers, nice and kind of billowy, so we should have a nice day. Trust everyone had a great weekend, ready to face the week ahead, close off November, and welcome December strong. I am Brenda Batiste, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. All the broadcast entities carrying us live, we thank you, and we welcome all the viewers and listeners to our program. It's now time to introduce our special talk panel of Senator Christopher Diali and Mr. Byron Campbell. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning to you, Brenda.
Listen, those shirts, those tie, shirt, what's going on?
We had to keep you close, We had to make sure keep everything at the standard.
You speak for both of us.
Yes. Thank you, Byron.
You guys are good for my ego. Anyway, good morning, and how are we this morning?
Morning to you, and morning to the team and the viewers and our listeners. It's a pleasure to be back again another Monday, as you indicated, heading into December with quite a bit of speed. Mm-hmm. November has almost concluded already. Mm-hmm. And, we're seeing a lot of activity, I think, happening in the country as we continue to see the opening up of the country to some degree. But of course, the major issue coming out this week internationally and otherwise is this new variant in COVID, is Omicron, as they call it, and what is happening there. But before I go into that, I wanted to, of course, extend condolences to the family of the Basil Harford who passed last week, especially his wife Madonna, my good friend, and I just want to say, may the good Lord give us strength to deal with this difficult time, and the family, and condolences to them. So. That being said, we didn't have much activity happening in Grenada over the week, except people getting a little excited, I would think, Byron.
Why?
The Christmas is Christmas, and it's a time for giving and sharing and, making it feel good. And so I thought, I went dancing last week, Tuesday.
Whoa.
So for the first time in months.
Wow.
We had a Latin dance session.
Quite a dancer.
Yeah, so it was fun, just to come out and meet people and dance and so on.
That feel good, right?
Yeah. So that was a good thing, and with all that's happening in the country and all that's going on, as Brenda said, you get a chance to, as we say in local parlance, free up.
Yeah.
And it's good for the psyche.
What?
So I thought that was good.
Certainly is.
Morning all. Greetings. End of the month, as we said. True. I also join in extending deepest condolences to the Harford family, Mrs. Harford family. He's a good man. He made his mark. He's made his contribution.
Good agriculturist as well.
Yeah. Had a good head. Very, very focused individual.
Dedicated public servant.
That's correct.
From the last good group of dedicated public servants, professional public servants.
Chris, you talk about you were out dancing. My son told me he was out on the weekend, and there were crowds. Of course, the places he went, you need to show evidence of your vaccination status. But there's a pressure. If you listen to him for opening up, period. His argument is like, why? What purpose is the 12 o'clock doing? But I caution Chris, and I know one of our colleagues here.
I like his son. We could.
She did press the Prime Minister.
He bothered with me.
But Chris, as you rightly mentioned in your intro remarks there about the new variant, the Omicron, in that is a variant of interest. But the bigger point, and Brenda, we spoke about this last Wednesday with the SGU, the question of the equity of vaccination, and when we don't have equity, if we have African countries with 5 and 6% vaccination in the population, then it raises the question of the rise of new variants and other variants. The point the WHO has been making is that if you don't have equity, if you don't have whether it's 40 or 70% across the globe, then no one is safe. No one is really protected. You know, so it's a big point. And I raised the point. You know, if you're a healthy adult or healthy individual, do you really need a booster in the where you have so much countries of the world? One of the points put forward by Grenada, for example, is that these vaccines are given anyway. They're going to spoil. You know, they're going to expire. So they're given. So we have to use it. It makes sense. So a small island, we can't use ourselves to measure what's happening globally. But it's a wider issue. 80% of the vaccines distributed so far has gone to the G20 countries.
That's right.
So it tells you the level of inequity there and the problems it creates by the rise of new variants like what we're seeing now.
Absolutely. Just before there's a beautiful article in the New York Post that I read yesterday, and actually the terminology used is vaccine apartheid.
Yeah.
And as they refer to what has happened on the African continent with the inequity of vaccines and globally. And one of the things that seems to be, you know, is proven true, because from the time this pandemic started, it was the WHO and people like Fauci and others saying, listen, the world needs to be, enough of us globally needs to be vaccinated. And if we're not, the COVID-19 is never going to become endemic. We are going to continue to have strains of variants, and every variant that comes along, it's going to be more contagious than the one prior, and that is what is happening. So there is some consistency with all the inconsistencies with findings about COVID and so on. That is the consistency there. The fact that, as you mentioned, Africa like 6%, that's like. So you know that something like Omicron coming across that continent is going to be, and it's kind of unfair how, you know, they label the thing South Africa and Delta, and, you know, because what you do is stigmatize a region of the world, and enough division already, because you're finding it now, you know, in Ontario, Canada today, in New York, you know, you're finding it across Australia. You are finding strains of it everywhere. Maybe you can use a term, it was first identified in South Africa, but you just say the South African variant, you know. But anyway.
And, the punitive measures taken as far as travel is concerned.
Exactly, because Africans cannot leave the continent now to come over to the US, to come over, and just where they trade. That's where the trade is boosting, and all of that is now going to be quelled because of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, all of us have lockdown. There are countries that have seen it, but I mean, Grenada's case. Look at we just open up to Europeans, to Americans, cruise tourism, and here it is. They're seeing samples of these variants in New York, in Europe.
Correct.
The same places that we have opened up our tourism to. So the possibility, yes, we log them to African countries, but what happens to these people in New York who have already got,
we're moving,
you know,
once we keep moving,
and we don't seem to yet have an answer for the Omicron as it is. So how are we going to manage this if it comes into our region, which I am quite certain it will?
Because they have openly said that they have openly said that the vaccines that we have, the efficiency, they don't know that could come back on.
Yeah, because of
so that is why
the multiple protein things that are on this new one.
Correct.
So that's why. Up to 30, what it's called.
So that's why they're pushing this, the boosters and so on, but it's just.
But what they've been arguing is that it's premature to make a judgment on this new variant. The point is that they're aware that it's several times, it's in terms of its spread, it's very rapid, more than the previous variants. But in terms of persons getting very sick or dying, there's no evidence of this yet. So WTO was saying, look, it's premature. They're not following the science, to lock down everywhere immediately at this time. But I suppose, like Israel, for example, just ban all foreigners, period. They got to the extreme. But we see Europe, America, and other countries, but it's everywhere already.
It's clear that there's I mean, in every sense of the world, this pandemic and this virus is really novel. And there's really no blueprint for responses. And so
Yeah.
you just find that people are having these
Yeah.
very visceral
Yeah.
reaction to this
Well,
thing.
well, it's fair.
You know,
It's fair. I
it
mean,
is. So
a lot of
as soon as
countries-
you hear it, what do?
Yeah.
You lock down. And if you're hearing something, one of the things that really concerned me about this one, because it is so highly contagious, listen, if we can't go outside.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Think of
and you know,
You
I
know,
want to
it's-
come back
it's
on the equity
crazy.
thing, because that
Yeah.
equity thing is so important. I was listening to an African doctor who was the lead in Africa for distribution of vaccines, and she was saying, you know, she was heavily critical of the lead powers in the world, like the US and Europe and so on, who
Yeah.
are producers of vaccine, and the amount of vaccines that have gotten to Africa.
Yeah.
You know, to have a 6%. She said it is just ridiculous how these countries articulated and doing what they want. WHO arms and every legs were bound because they couldn't
Yeah.
do much through their
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the world will continue to see mutations and variations coming unless we get
And it's so
a better
sad.
distribution of vaccines
It
worldwide.
is,
Absolutely.
it is, it
Bottom
is,
line.
it is, the optics are bad because there you are, all you these wealthy nations, all your citizens are having their third shot, boosters. And there you have a a continent like Africa, and even us
Yeah.
in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Because make no mistake, you know, what they give us there,
Yeah.
we are so grateful for. It's just, you know.
No, but we remember
these
we had to
countries-
fight, you know.
Correct, we did.
We had to fight. Trinidad was fighting
So
to get
there you
an
are,
answer.
there you are. Your citizens are having boosters, and in parts of the world
They can't
there
even
are
see.
places that have not even seen the landing of one vaccine.
It's true. So where are we at vaccination in Grenada? The WTO is saying, look, they would like most countries to attain a 40% by the end of the year, and mid next year about a 70%.
So we
So
are
I think
36.
we could attain that 40% by the end of the year.
We are
I think the
36
numbers
now.
are clearly looking up for us, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I have a
And
bottle for when we get to 40%.
40%. But making the news also this week, there was a conversation with the Prime Minister earlier in the week, and one of the questions that came up there was oil and gas, and there was some ricochet of it, coming out. But I've said this before, Chris. We spoke about this before, particularly coming out of the COP26 conference, where the World Bank, the European Union Investment Fund, most major investment facilities have taken a decision with immediate effect to cease financing of oil and gas
Exploration and
That's
de-drilling.
period. That's across the board, and that's the message for all sectors: private sector, governments, everywhere. So if you're in the exploration mode, if you're in that mode, it means you're on notice. Don't pursue, because it's no longer. In other words, you have to pursue alternative energy at this point, regardless of what your previous strategy was. You have to reform that strategy and look ahead. I'm not going to talk about the budget now. We can talk about it later. But I just want to make this point that it's a financing issue now.
It's more than that. I
Yeah.
mean, when you look at the Guyana situation, Guyana is put in a rather unique position with this.
Yeah.
Because Guyana have so much deposits of oil and gas. And they have started to exploit, but the companies that are there now, the traditional BPs and so on, are now going to have to see how the developing of the other wells and the other sites that are commercially exploitable, how they're going to do this, because of the financing aspect that you say is closing, and they'll have to now look internal to see how they continue to finance.
Yeah.
But the bigger question for Guyana and the rest of the region to me is, for example, how do we balance? Because Guyana is trying to put a fine balance between being in oil and gas, exploiting oil and gas, which is good for the economy. The price is good now, so they have great benefits. But balance that with the climate change, with the forests and the carbon and what's going on with that, and how they're treading a very delicate balance between the two. And I am also of the opinion that countries like Trinidad and the rest of the OECS need to engage now to see how we could get the gas in particular. Trinidad is in dire need of gas. There was a talk of doing a pipeline between Guyana and Trinidad. Now the financing for that is in jeopardy because Trinidad just got downgraded again recently in terms of their paper. So they're raising financing through paper for them is going to be difficult based on the downgrade. So there is this, and then in our situation, I know we're going to, it's part of the budget conversation to some degree, but I think one of the things that was missing in the energy conversation, and I don't know if it's there in detail when we hear the other presentations, is a conversion of our engines at Grenada, even though it's one from diesel to natural gas.
Let's start the process.
Start the process, or give us timelines in the next 3 years, we could see something, because of course you have to get the natural gas here, store it, and then be able to. So there is some logistics to work out, but that is a conversation I think we need to engage now regionally with Ghana and so on, to see how for the region we could change that, because the cost savings in going to natural gas versus diesel is significant. That is what Trinidad has been doing for years.
I think what has happened, just to speak to the meat of your point of how the answer he gave to the oil and gas question, how it ricocheted or was received by members of the general public. We have to be honest about it. It's purely political, because on the eve of the 2018 elections, the announcement was made about, the really positive, that finds that we may have going to have, based on exploration. And I think what has happened, and something that we need to get better at, is that we have not had a lot of finite updates as to where, after that announcement was made, as to where we were going. There were a couple times in between the years that questions were asked of Minister Bowen in particular, I remember, about it. And, once or twice we heard, general things, but nothing too, right? So what the Prime Minister said in his answer is not incorrect, right? But it was not received in a germane way, because there are people saying, well, you promised us. You say, you say, that's what it is. That's what it is. Make no mistake about it. That's what they're reacting to. On the eve of the elections of 2018, you said to us that here, we are going to have this. And what he said last Sunday is not untrue. The fact is that who's going to be investing all this money in exploration now that the world is going this way? And the people who would normally give money, exactly. And so even the people who have explored and said to us, well, what we find is a lot of gas deposits and so on and so forth. Who's to say that they would be interested in coming back to it? But make no mistake about it. The populace is responding to what was a political promise in an election campaign, and we have come back. We have not had any serious update on the matter, because that's the thing with the implementation as well. There need to be some updates on these things, because sometimes so this is happening and you see it dormant for a while. Hey, what's happening here? Tell us, So we need to get better at that. So I think that's what people are responding to, the whole political thing. And you just have to, you have to catch a politician on something. What are you promising oil and gas? And here you are saying yada yada yada. Yeah. So it's not to say he was saying an untruth or what, it's really the new situation of the world. But you never came back to us and said to us, well, listen, this isn't really working out, Here's what's happening. That's what it is.
So there need to be more dialogue. But I think the bigger point, that's important. And keep in mind, the investors are there to make money.
Correct.
And if there's no money, there's no future in it, they're not going to go there.
That's correct.
It's logical. Supply and demand. But Chris, you're making a bigger point that coming out from the COP, if Grenada is saying, look, in 2030, we need to cut emission by 50%, what is the strategy going forward? Since the biggest energy user of fossil fuel is our generator, it means that
generation
the
and
point
transport.
you're making, and transport, we have to approach this, that question. So we need to see the plan. How are we going to get there? What's the modalities?
And there's the issue of the environment is a constantly changing one. I mean, Brenda is correct. The updates are lacking and they're slow to do these things. And there was always a shroud of secrecy around this whole energy development and what is happening and the investors. So it politically didn't play well for them now that they have changed and the dynamics are so different now, because we have this thing about speaking about the blue economy and the exploitation of the blue economy for these island states and so on. But the blue economy is challenged with the same oil and gas, because oil and gas is part of the blue economy.
So they now have to redirect.
So how do you balance exploitation of oil and gas in the blue economy and still balance it with the climate change issues that's happened to the blue economy, like coral reef bleaching and acidity of the oceans and seawater rises and sea level rises
See, if
and
it's
so
done
on.
well, it would help. It would help our climate change issues, because something like overfishing. If you say, and that's why it's so important that Grenada is ahead on a lot of these things, you know.
Yeah,
we have the MPAs and all of that, but you see, our people now culturally, we just go and fish.
Well,
we
look
go
at-
there, you know. So that we have to
Somebody
get. I
was-
think we have to do a lot. Not I think. We have to do a lot of education on this climate change and
MPAs
resilience thing.
set up in the country, but someone was just telling me about what was happening in the Dominican Republic with parrotfish. You know parrotfish. You
Yes.
grew up in the sea, you know what parrotfish is.
Yeah.
None of us understood the value of parrotfish until the DR lost primarily all their parrotfish, and with that goes the beaches.
Yeah.
And the reefs, because the parrotfish, how they operate, they'll eat all the algae on the corals, and they know through their digestive system, when they're eating the algae, they will consume little rocks and so on, and they produce sand. And that is a parrotfish rare role, and to keep the other fisheries going and so on. So when you get rid of the parrotfish and you move that imbalance, you move that balance.
The whole
it's problem.
ecology is
the whole thing goes, and
affected.
we have MPAs, and I'm making this point that yes, we have marine protected areas, but we don't educate our people enough about why we have an MPA. So for example, parrotfish. When you see a parrotfish, you catch it in your net, throw it back, because you have so much other fish you could eat. But this is so important by educating them on the use of the
It's an area I have a lot of
parrotfish.
interest in, because I happen to serve on the management committee of the MPA, so I'm aware of it. It's an area that interests me a lot. I'm in the sea often. I'm aware of what's going on there. But in the blue economy, what's happening is I think we have a bit of an overcapitalization of the fisheries sector. In other words, the banks are financing trawlers, but the level of catch is not going up. It means that
They have to go so much further now.
We're now in the Atlantic, you know.
Yeah.
And so the science, we don't have the data to really, if you're doing
That's what's
agriculture, it's
needed.
visible, you know. When you're fishing, it's not visible. You're not seeing anything.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work there in terms of the managing of that sector generally that has to go in, and that's important. It's a task ahead, but it's been approached.
I remember, I didn't even understand. I remember hearing fishers talking about not being able, they were not getting snapper and redfish anymore. And you know, the fisherman was on a while back. A fisherman was on television saying that, you know, before they'll just go and thing and they'll get all the snapper and the butterfish or redfish or whatever. And you know, he said, well, he don't know if they gone further out and why they went further out. And so, and I remember Mr. Was it Crofton Isaac of blessed memory? He's a marine biologist at the ministry. And there he was explaining why the snapper and so had gone further out, and he was tying it to, and he made a very critical point that the fishermen, is so hard to tell them, because it's a source of the sea, it's a source of their livelihood. And as human beings, we believe that the sea is endless and boundless, which it is, that we just don't understand that, hey, give this area a rest. Go over there. You know, that sort of thing.
We had to,
that is a kind of concentration and information and understanding that we need to give to the users of fisherfolk and of course us, the wider community.
Yeah, when you pull your net, as I say, if you get the parrotfish, you throw it back, because you know there's. And then we had the invasion of the
lionfish.
The lionfish.
The lionfish.
Too, which also
delicious.
push the snappers on them further because they were, you know, eating everything in their sight.
Lionfish is delicious.
That's right. Yeah, it is.
So delicious.
But I mean, we went and we had a campaign against the lionfish, which seemed to have worked to some degree.
Yes, it did. It did.
You know, it's a similar thing. Once we talk to our fishermen, if they hook a parrotfish, whatever, that we throw it back and we let them know that this is the importance of these
How
fish.
you telling a man that want to sell how much pound of fish and he have 5 girlfriends to give $500 Friday,
sell
that
the
you should
others.
throw back the
We are in
parrotfish?
Cavalli and
One
other
of the
things.
things we're approaching, Chris, with that is a major issue with the seeing fishing. And that's the near shore fishing. And the fauché, that's the part, the back of the net that actually catches the fish, and you should have the fishers have a very small net there. We need to have a larger net at the back there to allow the juvenile fishes to
go.
escape.
Yeah.
Simple
Yeah.
things like that.
So this is
Byron.
what we work
Simple
on because there are
things.
standards for this. So we
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
and I must admit, there's a lot more training now of fishers
Yeah,
in these areas,
yeah.
and some financing also available.
And we have
for this.
Yeah, that's
have
good.
younger
That's
ones
great.
as well.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
we're having is a generational change
Yeah.
and a shift.
Yeah.
So we need to capitalize on that
Yeah.
because if their mind and
Yeah.
thought process is the old way,
Yeah.
then we're not getting
Yeah.
anywhere with any new dispensation.
one
So
of
we
the-
have to really
Yeah.
change
The
the
thought
mindset.
processes that came up in this discussion with this person I was having is that, you know, foundations, a lot of hotels in like the DR and other places have these foundations that are set up within the hotel sector to target things like that. Because for the hotels, the development of sites and for people to go to sites and see what the country offers and so on is critical to maintain, including the seas. So the beaches, all of that is important for the hotel industry. So person was saying that we need in our parts to have hotels, have foundations set up that could work in conjunction with the MPAs that is done through the ministries to help educate in the education, put up flyers, put up whatever is required so that, you know, we constantly keep our fishers aware of what are the correct things to do as we move
Absolutely,
forward.
Chris,
Yeah,
that's the true.
yeah,
What we're
yeah.
looking for is a balance, sustainability, but livelihoods.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So
And
that's
it's
balance,
a
yeah.
huge resource.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
huge resource.
And a lot of these
you know,
foundations
we
get
en-
financed with grant funds.
True.
It's
Yeah.
not that they have to put up everything.
There's a lot of green
There's a
money
lot of
around now,
yes,
too.
there's a lot of money that you
Yeah.
could get grants to do a lot of these things. So it's
Yeah.
one of the things we probably need to.
So, gentlemen,
push.
at midnight tonight, Barbados becomes a republic. The Queen's last viceroy, the Governor General present, she will become Barbados's first president, Dame Sandra Mason.
Yeah,
And that is
Presidente.
huge. That is really historic. Barbados, I saw Prime Minister Motley saying that they will not be referred to as the Republic of Barbados. They will just be Barbados. Republic is their status, they're Republican. Dominica is not referred to as the Republic of Dominica. It is a republic. It is the Commonwealth of Dominica. I think we only say the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the Republic of Guyana, but there are other
Brenda,
republics. So that is just
I congratulate
fantastic.
the Bajans. I congratulate them.
Yeah.
I envy them also because somehow this is where I want to be.
I've been watching
In
a
a
lot of
big
their
way,
things
Chris.
over the
Yes,
weekend,
I
and
really
I
want
kind of
to be
envy
there.
too.
You are a child of the revolution, so I understand your passion.
Because it hurts me every day, you know, like.
Listen,
So
last,
Barbados, I'm gonna apply for citizenship. Yes.
last week, when we went to interview the Prime Minister last week, the interview was held in the cabinet room.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a very secret place in terms of our Westminster democracy and so on. And I look up on the wall. The most prominent picture on the wall is the Governor
Queen,
General,
the
right, and the
Queen,
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And there is Regina.
I
There is
heard-
Regina with all her diamonds drooping, and I'm like, boy, could just hoist up Dame Cecile and just bring her Prime Minister, keep it and take Regina picture and put it somewhere.
I mean,
I think
But
it's the
that was just
final,
me
I
being
think
my
it's the
radical
final
sense.
break that from the colonial past that is required. I mean,
it's
you
not
know, it's, so
magic,
it's one of those things. But
I mean, it's
you
like-
know, our OECS countries will be more difficult because
Can we
But
do this
anyway-
as one? All
anyway,
the
they have-
OCS come together.
that's
One
right
thing,
how it's supposed
But
That's what it would be.
anyway, they have done it really elegant. Prince
wow.
Charles is going to go to Barbados to
Yeah.
see the final,
Yeah.
goodbye.
Probably the next one to go is
Remain a
Jamaica.
part of the Commonwealth. You know,
Yes,
the
yes, they
nation.
are.
That's the point. You know,
Yeah.
so-
So
Probably-
nothing in terms of the global engagement changes.
Yeah.
But they say, listen, we're doing our business. Stay right over
The Queen
there.
is irrelevant.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
Suppose
thank
Jamaica
you,
is the
we're doing our
next easiest
business.
one to go.
Huh?
Yes,
Jamaica would be the next
But
we
easiest
tried
one.
to-
Actually,
Yeah, we had a- we
the
had a-
opposition in Jamaica has started a conversation, and Jamaicans are warming up to it. Yeah.
Did we
yeah.
start something here though, Chris? We had a, what do you call it, a referendum, no? Or something?
Well, we can't even get changed to our own constitution, so don't let me go down there. I mean,
I
How are we
listened
going
to
to get
some
there?
of.
What's the path, Chris?
I know, I don't know
You're
what's the path.
parliamentarian. What's the path to becoming a republic, Chris?
Well, the part is that you have to have consensus among your people that
Yes.
this is the way
Yeah.
But
they
in
want to go.
Barbados, they just passed a law.
Yeah, well, no, because they had Prime Minister Motley had the consensus of our nation to go there.
Well,
I mean, she didn't go to Parliament to have a change in the constitution. She went via law.
But she was advised.
Yeah,
she was advised that
our constitution. I'm not a constitutional expert, but our constitution may require something like that.
She was advised.
Majority.
Yeah, to have major changes.
It seems that she was determined this was top priority for her as a politician and as a prime minister, as part of her legacy. And she was advised that going this referendum way ain't gonna happen. It may not happen.
But you see, her constitution would give her leeway.
So she found leeway to do what she did now.
Probably don't.
I feel bad. I feel terrible.
And it will be difficult for...
I don't talk to me for the rest of
the OECS, in the OECS, because we're so interlinked with currency and everything else, judicial process and so on, that it will be difficult for just one of us to go and the other don't go. It has to be a consensus that all of us want to go at a certain time.
But we have different constitutions.
Well, maybe we should make representation to our prime minister. He's now the chairman of the OECS.
But it's not up to him.
And maybe it's something he can put on the table.
But he will say I did before.
But we are revolutionaries. Let me try now.
Yeah. Okay.
Something he can put. And let me tell you, if he gets scared, if he get your friend in St. Lucia. These people are revolutionaries.
Byron friend.
These people are revolutionary. They don't did this. Let's just.
I mean, we can't
to be honest.
One change to be constitution.
To be honest.
Let
me just don't talk about weeding. The referendum business. It's kind of.
Let's congratulate Barbados.
Of
course.
We have a lot to learn in terms of maturity and so on and so forth. We can learn a lot from Barbados where that is concerned. It's a different kind of people, and it goes way back, because they're enslavers. They taught their slaves, the people to read, and when they left the land and all of that. For them, it's a whole different thing. So that's probably why they behave superior, which I frown on. But it works.
Don't get me started on that.
I know. It works for their country. It works for their country. But anyway, you gentlemen are in the hot seat this morning.
We are.
And yes, you are going to be opining in your professional, your training, your experience, everything on the budget presented last Friday by Finance Minister, the Honorable Gregory Bowen. And when we come back, both of you will be in the hot seat. All ready? Y'all like hot seats, lukewarm seats, or cold seats?
The most we could do is say, we hope.
No, you don't get away to say you don't know with me. No. With me. We are going to go there.
Okay.
All right. And we're going to take a break and come right back. But before we take the break, I must extend deepest condolences to the family of the late, great Basil Harford. Mr. Harford was a great Grenadian, a great public servant, a community man, husband, father, coach to many of us who learned at his feet as young people, as when we started the world of work. Mr. Harford served the public service in a stellar way. And of course, as Mr. Campbell mentioned, his contributions to agriculture. He always told us at work, listen, you have to have a little backyard garden. Your breakfast should come from your backyard garden or your kitchen garden. And so I extend condolences to Mrs. Madonna Harford, his wife, and to all his beautiful children and the other members of his family, his church family, and other families by extension. May he rest in peace, and may his memories live on forever. This is Perspectives. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Get vaxxed. It's your best shot. Hello.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
More than 5 million people dying from COVID-19. And we know that this certainly is an underestimate of the true number of people who have died. We certainly don't know yet the true toll that this pandemic has taken. These 5 million people, these lives, these livelihoods, parents, children, aunts, uncles, friends. Each person has a family. Each person has a story. It's been 2 weeks at the global level where we're starting to see cases increase again. Those who haven't had access to the vaccine are left vulnerable to getting severe disease and dying, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing cases among those who are not protected. We're seeing deaths among those who are not protected, and More than 50,000 people a week are dying from COVID-19. We do need to reflect on the milestone that we have now and work as hard as we possibly can to make sure that number does not keep increasing. We have to make some changes. And if we don't do this now, when will we?
Welcome back to Perspectives. If you're just joining us this morning, welcome to the broadcast. We welcome the people, brothers and sisters in Carriacou, Martinique. Somebody just said, I should say, Brenda, you didn't say good morning. You're accustomed saying good morning to the brothers and sisters. My apologies. Good morning to the folks in the Isle of Reefs, which is Carriacou, and of course to those of you in Petit Martinique. This morning, our expert talk panel, we are going to test their expertise and not test it, but we are going to draw from them their summary and, of course, what has happened in response to the budget that was presented last Friday at the Parliament by Minister for Finance, the Honorable Gregory Bowen. So, Senator Diali, what's that about? So, Senator Diali, the budget last Friday, there have been many responses to you. I'll first ask you, though, in your capacity as the representative for the private sector in the Senate, I know you must have had lots of WhatsApp messages, phone calls, people want to know, you know, and so generally what has been, before we get into all of the nuts and bolts of the presentation itself, what response have you gotten from the private sector about what was presented last Friday?
Well, the response has been relatively lukewarm for the private sector in particular. There were no direct issues for the private sector in terms of fiscal changes or fiscal reliefs or so forth in the private sector. But there is the issue of working the private sector through indirect sectors. So, for example, construction. Construction sector was highlighted as one of the sectors that's going to be definitely looked at significantly through implementation rate from the government's PSIP program, plus all the other projects that's going to be happening. So, private sector would indirectly benefit from that, definitely. But before I go into more detail, I think the important thing to say is that the speech is the speech, in the sense that the real analysis and real deep dive into the budget comes from the documents surrounding the speech, which is the risk document, dealing with the risk, the medium-term strategy plan, the debt document, and of course the book with the votes for the various ministries and so on.
Correct.
To compare what's happening.
Allocations.
So, right, until you get those documents and do some deep dives, you don't truly understand where the budget is going to come from. I thought, generally, though, from the speech, what I took out from it, first of all, this was a deficit budget that was presented. We haven't presented a deficit budget in a while. And you could understand that from of what is going on in the economy and what COVID did to us. But of course,
what's going on in the world?
Yes, and the minister was quick to say how he's going to finance his budget, which is something, again, slightly political from what we saw in the past. Then there is the issue of uncertainty that was built into this budget, because the indication of suspending of the rules under the Financial Act to say that government announced that they're going to suspend it again for this year, for 2022. Fiscal responsibility is an indication that we are not sure how this environment is going to pan out.
Correct.
There is still a great level of uncertainty. However, we're budgeting in this uncertainty. This is what we put in forward in terms of revenue and expenses and so on. So I thought that was another important issue that would have come forward. The other issue I thought was the whole management of labor and labor issues, because he did take the pains to point out, first of all, that the 4% increase due in January of 2022 will be done and will be put forward for public servants. He spoke about, giving the frontline people a 13th salary for the year, which would go. And most important, a big issue was contract workers in the public service.
Yeah.
That issue has been a burning issue for them, and they seem to want to address it now.
Well, I want to hear more
in
about that when the
2022.
Prime Minister speaks, because it falls, DPA falls under his ministry. So I want to hear more
I thought,
about
on
that.
a general sense, the theme of the budget is also something you look at to see how the budget responds to that, because their theme spoke about livelihoods and sustainability, and keeping in harmony with the 2035 goals that we have set.
Right.
So it is all, it needs to be assessed in that context. And of course the environment within which we operate now. What are the risks, upside and downside risks of the current environment economically, socially and otherwise, and where some of the emphasis are. So that's a general overview. Of course, as we dive in a little deeper with some of the things, I mean, some people would say, the other general comment is that there was a definite intent to put more monies in people's hands, to spend, so that you could generate economic activity.
Would you say, and that's why I asked for the private sector response, because if you say that there was a deliberate attempt to put monies into people's hands, then we can further expand on that by saying that is a direct response to what the people of the country is feeling, and that is what governments are supposed to do. And in so doing, who does it benefit?
Yes.
The private sector.
Definitely.
Right.
I mean, the fact that they're giving relief on electricity, trying to give relief on gas, put more money in the bushing program, put more money in seed and so on, and all of that speaks to the fact that there is a deliberate attempt to give people a little more ease, give you more spending power, and that in itself, if you spend and you move, you can have a situation where economic activities increase, and they're projecting a 4.5% GDP growth in 2022. So they must do things to try and get that. Of course, we always had the argument of debt and so on, but we'll talk about that later.
Right. Before I go on to Mr. Campbell, Senator Ali, in terms of the relief that's going to come with gas and energy and gas, how does that impact private sector again, like let's say a manufacturing company like yours, or other smaller and medium private sector manufacturing companies, or private sector businesses in general?
It does. I mean, let me tell you, the gas thing is a serious thing. The constant rising, and we have constant risings up to $17 plus now a gallon of gas, is something that we all battle. And you remember, in the private sector, we have salespeople that have to move up and down. When we set a travel allowance, is not something that we could just change because gas price moves. And they will tell you, boy, they're under significant pressures because of the change in gas prices and so on. But fixing of the gas price is nothing new. We have done this before. When we had, remember, Petro-Caribe was a form of fixing of the gas price, primarily for energy burning. And even with Sol and Urubis, we had a similar arrangement years ago, where we capped the price, and what would happen when the price went above the cap, of course, Sol and so had to pay the price that they brought it in. So it was like a loan given to government, and then when it fell below the cap, they would recover on that loan. So that, I suspect the mechanism will be similarly. And of course, the one with Grenada, where they have removed VAT and environmental levy on a certain range on the kilowatt burn, that is going to help the average man in doing work. But remember, that is on one side. You as an individual also have to learn to conserve and do things differently to help your own self in terms of the power charges. So it's a dual approach. So it is, government has a responsibility socially to see how they can help. I think to some degree that has been achieved. Some people term it electioneering because there's an election around the corner. And yes, and that's a political overtone state, but the real issue for the man on the street is, do I get relief? And they have offered some relief through gasoline prices, through Grenada rates, and through some of the other commodities that they have
zero rating on some items, VAT, and some food items.
And we have to remember, Brenda, inflation for us is imported inflation. 90% of our inflation is imported. Because we are a net importing country, from energy to food. So at the end of the day, government have little control as to how they address these issues. And they have to balance that back with the revenue. Because you need revenue to pay the 4% in January. We're going
to come to that, the hit they're going to take on the revenue side by freeing up and providing all that relief. Mr. Campbell, for you though, the Prime Minister said basically that the budget it's like a relief, a stimulus package, if you will, and that it was really in essence a people's budget. And also there's also, you know, other folks who say, well, it's an elections budget. So please respond to people's budget, to stimulus relief, and to election budget.
Brenda, a budget that has a context. I want to know. I want to know a few things when I look at a budget. I want to know how the current year or the past year, what the performance was. I want to know what we call the conjunctural analysis. What is the situation overall? What's globally? What's regionally? What are those factors affecting the nation? And it's interesting to note that, as Chris pointed out, the budget, three things: protecting lives, safeguarding livelihoods, and investing for growth and resilience. Now, so did it address those key themes? And we can investigate the budget or go closer to see to what extent it did. Yeah. So clearly, we have a budget that is in a deficit, almost $100 million in a deficit, and that's clearly pointed out. I also want to know what's the revenue. You know, do we have the money? Do we have the money to support, or there's a means, or there's a path to find those money to support all the things that we say we're going to do? Because we have a fixed, and also you're looking at where's that money coming from? What percentage of it is coming from grants? What percentage of it is coming from recurrent revenue? And what percentage of it is coming from loans? We know that, and these are important numbers for the population to note, that there is a formula called debt to GDP ratio. It gives you a kind of bearing on where your debt is. You know, we learned that our debt went up some 13%. You know, debt to GDP ratio, those numbers went up. But what the Minister of Finance indicated is that this is acceptable level according to the World Bank and other international institutions. Okay. So we can work with those numbers. It's not a crisis. And this is coming about because of the savings or the management that the government would have had in the past. And so the government is still eligible to receive significant financing from the World Bank in terms of budgetary support. So that's a good thing. But if I was a politician, I would say, I would wait in terms of, is this a election budget? Maybe not, maybe yes. But clearly, as Chris pointed out, there is significant resources that are directed towards both protecting lives and safeguarding livelihoods. In terms of, I was particularly pleased, Brenda, with the, as the government pointed out, a token of the appreciation to the frontline workers. These persons would have made significant sacrifices over the past 2 years, and I think it is, I am pleased to see my taxpayer dollar going to give them some support.
Yes,
I think this is
well.
worthy.
This
is a big deal. I'm also particularly, Chris,
I want to take it further.
Yeah.
I hope it's something we could do every December going forward.
I think the other thing, in looking at the past year, I mean, the numbers the government putting forward in terms of the rate of implementation for the public sector investment program, as much as 80%. I think if those are the numbers, this is very significant and this is huge, you know, because we're going to be rated based on that.
As you mentioned the PSIPs, I was like, when he mentioned the rate of implementation, I thought that was impressive as well.
You see, you have Minister Cox, who is in charge of that area, works on implementation, reporting regularly. And keeping the nation up to date on all the projects that's happening. The River Road, the ones in the Molineux, the this, the that. I think at one time he mentioned there are hundreds of projects being done now, small ones in varying sizes and so on. But the issue is you could see a definite push to improve, because last budget, the implementation rate was
really
around
poor.
50%.
I remember we spent a long time talking about it.
And if you could get it up to 80%, is a significant achievement.
I thought that was impressive.
And the issue with that is that the spend for capital is important, because you remember a lot of his monies is coming from NTF and CBI. Well, I'm going to talk a little on CBI because in my view, and from where I sit with CBI, it is one of the programs that government really have to maximize. We have done a lot of work in CBI in terms of increasing efficiency and so on, but I think the greatest thing for me in CBI is two things. The marketing of CBI needs to improve significantly, and I know there were works in the thing to get this marketing.
He
improved.
reported that did not wane in the pandemic.
That's right.
That
So what is
actually went
happening in
up.
CBI? There's a huge demand. There's greater demand than supply, and it's for us to capitalize on that and
Correct.
maximize on
Correct.
that. But your marketing has to be specific. He spoke about expanding the bond support about CBI. In other words, not primarily for ICT and accommodation, but bringing it into medical services, agriculture, and encouraging investments in that way.
Correct.
But the other thing with CBI for me that needs to significantly occur is we need to move CBI from being a department of government to becoming a statutorized organization.
Statutory, fluid,
And that
first
will
world
help,
organization.
That will help with the whole transparency and the perception that this is a program that has a level of professionalism attached to that, run in a
Not
particular
only that,
direction.
Senator Diallo, remember we are now, with CBI, we are now dealing with different cultures and people of different first world way of doing business. And I'm not saying that we're not first world, but I'm saying we should aspire to be in our engagement because we are trained to do business a certain way. And so it is very important that we look at that and try to bolster
Well, I mean,
that.
there are moves, and I know there are changes that have been suggested to the Act to make that happen.
Right.
And Prime Minister at the time was very open to having that discussion
I'm
as
sure.
well. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think CBI, and the reason I'm thinking on CBI, emphasizing on CBI, because CBI offers an income stream to the country that is nothing, that is unusual. Because to get investment flows into your country, and to get investment dollars, there must be something you offer. We can't compete with the Trinidadians and the Barbadoses and so on. So our way is CBI. And the way to go, and Grenada is a gold standard in terms of its security and its vetting.
We have gotten,
and we have maintained
based
that.
on our bad experiences,
we have
gotten really better.
Our program of a US visa thing attached to it. That is things that we need to capitalize. And my thing is, it is an area that has to be really focused
for
and
the
pushed.
year so far. You're talking about $30 million US. That's
Listen,
a lot of money.
we joking.
This is important money.
Roosevelt's carrot. His budget just went in Dominica through the roof. That's where he's getting his money.
Exactly.
Timothy Harrison St. Kitts. That's where he's getting his money.
They are leading CBI programs.
Yes, because of what has happened in their country. I mean, remember Dominica is like triple whammy. The hurricane, the floods, and then COVID. That's where
Chris,
that's
you would
coming
know
from.
this. How is because one of the criticism that's coming from other sources is the management of the National Transformation Fund. Chris, you will know about this, how it's managed. What's the procedure? What's the protocol on the management of this fund?
Well, the protocol and the management of the fund is in law.
Okay.
Yes,
right?
it is
in law.
It is.
It is nothing that.
I just think people need to know more about these things.
The government has to.
Hence the
Prime Minister
suspicion.
has to lay before Parliament every year. I think it's twice a year, on how the monies in the NTF is used and whether it is used according to law. That is why you saw in the budget, Minister of Finance, Minister Bowen, signify which projects was financed through NTF.
Through NTF,
right? Because
yes.
there's this
He did. That
thing
was
out
really
there
good.
that monies in the NTF is being used in whatever fashion. So yes, there is that, and it's in law. I think probably sometimes the reporting is a little bit delayed, and that probably people don't pay attention. Again, that's the marketing. Part of the marketing of CBI must say that when we put up a sign doing a project wherever in the country, whether it's Six Senses or what, it must be said that this is a CBI funded project. It's done through CBI. The bridge in Gov is money is being used from the NTF. We don't put up those things.
Correct.
We don't have posters or things saying to the general public
Chris,
that this is NTF.
Correct.
Brenda, I looked at the agricultural aspect, and this is very preliminary. And I was pleased to learn that a few things I picked up. That there was some growth in the current year, but 12.5, and for next year it's projected 8.4. But a number of specific things there, and when the minister comes, we're going to have more detail. But what I'm picking up here is already that MNIB is going to look at some major reforms so that it meets its mandates, which is specific more to both in terms of export and also purchase and distribution of local produce, but specifically. Some subsidies for fertilizer, which is a good, stiffer penalties, and other focus on technology for prettier larceny. as much as $5 million going towards feeder roads because access infrastructure is very important, and some increase in the farm labor support program, $1.5 million. So I mean,
Again, an effort to put money in people's hands.
in people's hands, yeah. So I'm pleased that the budget for agriculture has been increased. So I think that's a good thing. We could argue that there could be, and besides that the feeder roads project, and I know that the SAR program also has a number of over 10 farm access roads that we're working on. So I think agricultural sector, I'm glad to see there's greater focus and there's also resources being directed to deal with the pest and disease issue that we face. So I look forward to learning more about this. I think it's
my only criticism that I didn't hear him speak about, and I thought is going to be important going forward. The big gains in agriculture is coming from nutmeg. And the price on the international market for nutmeg has gone up significantly. And the forward-looking pricing for nutmeg is saying it's going to be maintained for a while. So two things for me. The merging of nutmeg and cocoa, I didn't think was mentioned, and that is something I'd like to see happen.
But that may come with the minister more.
Well, I mean, listen,
so we need to hear him speak about that.
Going into election, you think they're going to be talking about nutmeg and cocoa?
That is true, and I don't think that is going to happen probably until after election.
But if you could show the positive aspects of it.
Correct. And Brenda, you're so correct.
We kind of
I mentioned that already. Yes.
Yeah, we can't, listen, this period here, I'm no political strategist, but I'm Jane Blow, Grenadian, right? And from where I sit, right about now, if I'm a politician in the NNP, me ain't talking about
that's why I had to talk about this as independent senator.
Me ain't talking about how we call it? Margin, nutmeg and cocoa right now. Because listen, we should have done that last year, a year before. But we have something going, so let us just sit forward. Let me just bolster and build them. And then still,
I'd like to hear the minister speak about, of course, is that alliance between SGU to genetically develop things.
That is far advanced. That is far advanced.
And the last thing, Byron, on that is value added for nutmeg. You see how well value added is doing for cocoa. There must be a strategic plan from the GC, and I'm not saying it's not there, it probably is there. Talking about in the next 2 years or 3 years, this is where our value added for nutmeg will be. Whether it will be with the nutmeg pod, the number of things that's happening with the pod, whether it be with the shell, whatever it is. And there's a lot of things, I always say, a lot of things that's happening in nutmeg in terms of the cooler and the this and the that that they have done. So there are a lot of new
unless the associations come to their senses and they bring something to the minister and say, listen, we ready? Then you leave that till the next dispensation. But what I am picking up,
I'm happy about the agriculture thing.
What I am picking up is, and Mr. Campbell, you are in a very great you're in a great space to comment on this. What the sense that you're feeling is that there's a buzz with agriculture. There's a buzz that's happening, and it seemed to be spiraled by, we're not seeing the minister, but he's busy, he's entrenched, it seems, in boots and so on.
Brenda, I think, and this is because there is, I think everyone is seeing opportunities. And the global environment is providing all the problems with the value chain and all that's happening. We're seeing opportunities here, particularly to deal with the question of more sustainable agriculture, but eating what you grow what you eat, that whole philosophy kind of thing, and the nutritional aspect of it, the fact that the tourism sector is now buzzing back, and how the link with agriculture and tourism. And people, before we used to see it as all the resources, all the investment is going into tourism. I think even myself had that philosophy at one time. But now you're beginning to see clearly the linkage, and therefore it makes sense, because growth in your tourism also gives you the possibility for marketing possibility for your agricultural produce.
Because COVID opened a lot of eyes.
And I think the introduction of more technology, one of the things that's clearly here, and it's part of the strategy of the government, I know this, is how do we encourage more younger persons, and even starting at the 4-H level, at the young level, excite, motivate young persons to see agriculture as a profession, as a place where you can make money, Chris, that's profitable.
I would say my son is going into an agricultural project now. right?
Yeah.
Because
That's
he
fantastic.
he believes that there's money to be made. He has
Right.
written
It
up his
means that
project.
at home, at the dinner table, you never said to him, boy, you're crazy, you ain't going to be a doctor. Good for you.
And you know, he wants to be an entrepreneur. He wants to do his own
Yeah.
business.
Good.
And you encourage
Yeah.
that.
Good.
Yeah.
And that is something that
Yeah.
he is very he's
Yeah.
mature in the project, doing what he's doing now. So
Yeah.
I think young people have an interest, but his
Yeah.
own is, when you look at what he's planning to do, is technology.
Yeah.
A lot of technology.
Technology.
He
Yes.
ain't going to know boots and cutlass and so on. and
No,
all
you
that.
create
You
an app.
understand?
No,
Greenhouses, shade houses.
no. You create an
That is-
app and you make the thing work.
That's very easy.
But one thing I'm not hearing about though, the decriminalization of marijuana.
What? You
I'm-
sleeping?
Well,
That's the
I
first
didn't
reading
hear
going to the
anything.
parliament.
When? Monday? Today?
I don't know when. It's a first. It's ready. Yeah.
No, it's going to be in the new year. I mean,
Yeah,
right now, the rest
yeah.
of the year is going to be devoted
The
to budget debate.
Budget, yeah. There's a
Okay.
first
But,
reading ready to
it's
go.
So this is
So-
coming.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I
You
know
fell asleep,
in-
man.
I know.
I probably have. I didn't hear
Well, I
that
know,
mention of this.
In the legislative agenda
put
put forward- The legislative agenda put forward by the
Listen.
tone speech
Yes.
spoke to energy development,
Yeah,
digital
yeah.
transformation,
Okay.
climate change mitigation, adaptation, economic policy, public finance management, and labor relations. It didn't speak to specifically
Exactly, it
that.
didn't. So I
No,
just
that
didn't
was
pick
announced.
up.
That was announced.
It
That
was?
Yes,
You know,
it
so
was.
probably-
picked
Not
that
at the
I didn't
budget.
pick it
No,
up, but,
not at the budget. That's out
It's
there.
probably in the legislative agenda when it comes to economic.
So Chris,
economic
you should have
policy.
had
Not
the
at the
draft
budget.
papers by now.
No, we haven't had that yet. That hasn't come forward yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
know.
on the budget, though, I want to go back to the
Yeah.
issue of the sectors, and we have seen what was expected
Before
that
we,
the sectors.
we go break down into the sectors, though, Senator Daly, where would a lot of the spending seem to be focused on, the relief for the public and all of that. But in terms of the revenue side of it, where do you think most of the revenue will be coming from
Well-
to finance these initiatives?
A lot of the revenue is going to come through, well, let's take grants out of the picture, because grants is through
Yeah.
loans and grants and so on.
Yeah.
So if you take that, it's going to come from the economic activity. Because VAT is a major earner for the government. The corporate taxes, the stamp tax, and the cross-border taxes is where
Yeah.
traditionally all our revenue comes from.
Duties, yeah.
So with the increased economic activity, particularly through construction, because construction is predicted to grow by in the double-digit figures in 2022, and all the huge projects that was announced in the budget, and if these get going significantly, then so that is where a lot of the money is going to come from, the cross-border taxes from seeing the importation of all the construction material, the cement, the steel, the whatever
Right.
is required. So you're going to see a lot of that there. Plus, corporation taxes, I suspect, when you look at the detail and what the projection is going to be relatively flat, because even though businesses
how
recovered,
business is going to pay this? Yeah.
right, even though businesses recovered in 2021 to some degree in terms of the top line revenues and so on, what has happened is that because we pay advanced corporation tax, so every month we pay taxes ahead,
Yes.
but at the end of the year, when you come to reconcile in March, you put all your advance against what you currently have, and you work it out. So the government may not have a lot, so that may be a flat line. So to me, the real issue is through CBI as an alternative income stream, and through the cross-border taxes with the increased economic activity, in particularly the VAT.
Right,
And VAT at the local
right,
level,
right.
and what is consumed there. Because with more people spending and more people want to be normalized out of COVID, you'll spend a little more and so on. And that is where I think most of the revenue, and of course, when we delve into the numbers, we're going to see exactly
that
what the
more detail.
predictions are. But
I'm
I'm
being
assuming
reliably
that's where
informed
it
here,
is.
though, that the bill was tabled last Friday. It was on the order paper. The bill
Last
for the
Friday.
decriminalization.
But how could it have been?
right.
Did the parliament not close, adjourn after the presentation?
There
of
were tablings happening before the budget, where they went into the budget in earnest.
So probably
I
what they would have
remember,
done,
yeah,
they probably
yeah.
just table it and suspended it going through all
Correct.
the
Yes,
all the
and
stages.
they can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can table it, but don't bring it through all the stages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
That's good news.
My Rasta colleagues would be happy with this.
Yeah,
you know.
it
They
means
were
you're-
saying,
Yes,
they were
because-
saying,
because-
they were saying, like, what's happening? I mean,
Yes.
this is an election gimmick or something. I mean, like,
Yes, because it's going to be
Right.
part of, I think part
you
of
cannot
the
put
whole,
half an acre on a cultivation.
part of
An
the
acre.
whole,
An acre,
Yeah.
at least.
you want to cultivate
An
an
acre.
acre. I think part of you guys getting excited
Yeah.
or watching
Yeah.
all you know. Part of the element of a deep part of the heart
Yeah.
of this legislation is that it gets freed up for the Rastafarian community
Yeah.
for their ceremonial purposes.
Precisely.
Yeah, and then small quantities you know,
Yeah,
to
so
carry
it's not
or
yet
to
commercial. That's not the aspect.
no.
It's just the
That's
decriminalization aspect of it.
That's not where
exactly.
it's going.
That's what I think. It's in two
not,
phases.
It's not legalization.
Right.
Yeah.
It is decriminalization, and
There's
there are
a big
these
difference.
specific things.
Yeah.
So we just need to understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we said it already. Grenada is way behind on it in terms of where our neighbors and
true.
other islands and so are on. But we are going somewhere,
Yeah.
and I think we are starting off in
Yeah.
the right place.
I suspect the
It's
Minister
about
of
time,
Agriculture will talk about
Would
it.
elaborate.
Oh yes,
Absolutely.
because that's a big
Absolutely.
deal. That's a big deal. The fact that
Absolutely,
these
yeah.
consultations
Yeah.
bore fruit and you can now
Yeah,
present
yeah,
it,
yeah.
that's great.
But Chris, I mean, one of the I'm always interested in the whole question of unemployment and poverty in particular, and there was some statement on this that indicated that that there were a number of jobs, some 13,000, that the unemployment rate was at 28%, and now it's dropped to 16.6. And I'm sure that these numbers are coming from the statistics division, you know, and they are quite efficient on this. This is really good news. It means a lot more people are getting back into the job sector, employment sector, and this is a good thing, particularly at this time of the year or any time period. It's good.
And I think there's a greater challenge because let's take the hotel and tourism sector. There is a serious shortage of labor in that particular sector. And the shortage is being created from two folds. The issue of a number of workers, excuse me, who don't want to get vaccinated. And, you know, a lot of the restaurants and the hotels, I mean, Royalton is opened up and, you know, the calabashes and so on, they're struggling to get staff to work at because
And
of
by
the
the way,
vaccination
these
issue.
properties are at high occupancy.
Yeah, and,
Very high occupancy.
You know, the level of service pricing have opened back up. So, you know, there's so we're talking, yes, of that percentage, and you could understand that, but from what I hear from that sector is that, you know, they are struggling to get staff. And
Yeah.
the issue here is vaccination to a large degree to some,
Yeah.
because you must come into that environment vaccinated.
Yeah.
So there is opportunity there for our people if they're willing to make a certain decision regarding
Yeah.
vaccination and the status. And you know, that is a good thing, as you say. That is not a bad thing because it means more and more people are normalizing in terms of their livelihoods and putting that situation behind them. So it is something that we need to constantly keep encouraging about the vaccinations.
And how it's linked to youth. There's a lot of discussions on this in terms of, I saw resources, some 10 million going into youth training, business support training, and facility grant financing facility. So I think because we move into an area where young people cannot just look to government or getting a job. They have to look at what skills do I need to, and how we change the syllabus in the school also, because this is absolutely important revenue for sustainable livelihoods.
Let's talk about two things. I think the program WISH, and we had Barry on talking about WISH.
Cindy School of Hospitality.
WISH now offers these young people who wants to go into culinary arts, tourism, and management, and so on, a huge opportunity. And it is free. The scholarships are free. They don't have to put up no money up front.
And I hope employers are really taking advantage
And I think that
of
is
this.
something that our young people should gravitate or rush towards, those who are inclined in that area. Particularly our men. You know, coming out of Barbados, it has been said that men make better waiters than women. It is just something, I don't know, probably of the male demeanor.
I don't agree.
No. I mean, it is. If you go in restaurants in Barbados, the huge percentage of waiters are male.
They have a particular reason in Barbados for this?
Yeah,
No. Male seems to be a lot more.
Yeah, they do. They check on you more. They are more.
Is that interesting?
I believe in Brenda. I don't believe you.
No. I'm telling you. That was my experience.
I have just gone into my space where I'm thinking about my experience with male
and
waiters.
when you talk to restaurant owners in Barbados, they will tell you
Yeah.
that the men are more efficient in terms of knowing the wines, the knowledge of the wines, remembering the people who come in and what they like to eat.
There's a way
there's a personal
there's a way
touch.
they stroke and massage you that is
That's quite different, and it has nothing to do with our women. I mean, our women have their
the women are highly
areas.
efficient and courteous,
Chris,
but the men have a way they
Chris,
just.
you didn't convince me. Brenda did.
I'm happy somebody convinced you. So I'm saying that to say this, and I'm going back to your point of opportunity for young people in terms of training and development. And you know, we always talk about we graduate so much young people and there is no opportunity. But there are some avenues of opportunity being created. Not all will go into hospitality, but hospitality is a growing industry that needs to be looked at. And there is, as you say, in different areas of ICT and other things that traditionally agriculture, commentating the technology, bringing technology to it. So there's avenues, and I think our young people are now moving away from having to always go for a job and trying to see how they could become entrepreneurs themselves. And that is something we have to push. I think you push that through SAEP and SEED and all of that. So I think there is room there for us. And you know, I'm trying to say, Brenda,
like a huge
there is still hope.
HOPE.
And you know, just now we're going to see a huge collage going up on a building in Tongue. I want to let the cat out of the bag. I was going to speak to Hope. That Citizens is part of, and other private sector companies are part of. We're going to put up a huge mural, and it's going to speak to people about hope. Speak to people about Grenada.
I love that.
And what we want to do and what we want to see.
My friend Wagiti have a thing, Keep Hope Alive. I ascribe to that.
And I think, you know, a budget can't touch everything in 1 year, but it must touch critical things. And you know, the social programs are going to be maintained in this budget, apparently. I was just bringing up the thing.
Yes, they are. But there were increases for the seed program.
1.3 million for needy assistance. $150 more, an increase of $150 per household for beneficiaries of seed.
And remember, with the seed, the maximum, I think at present, the maximum depends on the household. The amount per household, they get up to $500. So if you add 150 to $500 to a family receiving 500 now, it means that it takes them on to 650. So that's pretty significant.
$2 million for single household support program, $2.8 million for multi-projects for the elderly program, $5 million for housing assistance, $10 million for the home improvement program, and $4 million for soft loan for the housing program. And that's a lot of things under housing. So, I mean, but the point is, there is the social network programs that are going to ensure that social safeguards are there, which is an important part for accessing funding.
I noticed Dominica's budget, the social allocation was huge as well. Because don't you think though that really is the core? Because of everything that has happened with the pandemic, that really is the core, addressing the social needs of the populace, and still have to balance to find revenue, keep the economy ticking,
because the
all of
investment,
that.
you want those numbers to go down. That you want your social program, because the more people come out of poverty, it's the better for you. So that's where you have to invest at the same time.
But the reality is, so many people got poor this year.
So exactly. So you have to support them, but at the same time, that's where the balance comes in, how you shift resources.
I remember, you now have a group of people who have never before have now entered what you would call the needy or the vulnerable group, right? Because if you have not worked from April 2019 to present, or even if, that's another thing, Senator Diali, to consider what might be impacting us negatively. The fact that, yes, people are dressing and going to work every day, but they are doing so at decreased income. You know, in some cases as much as 60%.
Well, I mean,
you see? So yes, you may be going to work, but you have your ability, your quality of life, your ability to earn, that is significantly reduced. These are the realities that this budget seems to be attempting to respond to.
I think Byron's point about the training and the different levels of training in C to augment what you already do. So there's nothing wrong in being cross-trained.
No, the more you know.
I am, yes, I am in engineering, I'm an engineer, but I do a lot of things home that is not necessarily engineering. I mean, yes, you know, and I love agriculture, so I'll do something so I could augment my food budget. And, you know, the different things that you do, and our people, I think at that point, COVID would have brought a lot of us there, understanding that, yes, I'm a plumber, but I could still plant things and grow medical lettuce and so on to augment the food budget.
Make a real good roti and sell.
Yeah, so there is that. So, you know, there is this area that that has developed. But quickly too, I think education services got the largest allocation,
yeah.
as was expected.
Yeah.
Because
Well, look what's happening.
education, you know, there's so much going on with the blended learning, the children and getting them back and all the issues with that. Then there's the schools, the refurbishment of the schools and so on that has to happen. Then there is a whole issue of the government is now relooking the TAMCC legislation as well as the Education Act to review to see how they could, as you say, modernize it, look at curriculum changes, make it more relevant, you know, and more applicable to what we do now in the new environment. So there is a lot of emphasis that is going to happen in education, and be interesting to hear the minister when she presents.
And health. There's an increased allocation to this. This very important.
Necessary. Because remember, we have to continue to fight COVID.
It's not going away.
Yeah, here comes Omicron. It sounds like a robotic something.
Yeah, you know. So we're gonna keep the curfew. Probably,
and then remember,
probably increase it a bit, Chris. When
listen,
bring it up to 9 o'clock.
Let's leave curfew alone. Let's talk about the budget, please.
Hello,
Mr. Kabla, I respect you. I love you.
Don't go there. Stop it.
You just leave curfew alone, please. Let's just talk about this. I was
Remember,
about
our
to
restaurants
say.
and entertainment have suffered enough. They need a break.
The government need the corporation tax. Say you want to tell a restaurant open 9 o'clock.
And I must say, you know, my experience in recent times in going to these venues, they ask for your vaccination card.
Not just your vaccination card. Them people real rigid. They're telling you. Them people kind of getting on real, kind of, you know, I can't use the word. They're asking you for your ID, right? And they're very, very deliberate to say they need an ID that you use when you got vaccinated.
But I want to throw something on the table for you, and that's the environment. You know, I know the minister spoke to it in the budget, and there is going to be some focus on it, but I am of the view that, you know, and I'm very anxiously awaiting to hear Minister Steele give his report on COP26 and what has happened there and access to funding. Because I stated in our last program that I think there is projects that need to happen in Grenada now. We can't wait 3 to 5 years to get funding for it to happen. It's no. And there are a number of areas that is already in threat and at risk and that we have to deal with now. Whether it is through Nawasa, through the storage and water issues and what is happening with water, or whether it is through protection of our cities and sites and what is happening with that and what we do there. So, I mean, that to me is a major issue, climate change and what is going to happen to our countries, these small and developing states.
Having said that, though, Senator Deali, should we be looking, when they make their presentation, should we be looking at the Minister of Energy, what he says about where, you know, the projects they're going to be embarking on or the initiatives, and how that is bolstered or linked with what they're going to be saying in climate change? Because if you ask me, they both now have to have a synergy and, moving forward.
I said on another program that I believe PERC, there is a lot of work that needs to be done with PERC, because PERC, for us in the sector with PV and pushing that aspect of the energy generation, PERC have some areas that need to be clarified. And I give you an example of one, which I stated before, that PERC says that you need to come back to them for a license for renewal if you're energy producer through PV systems after 15 years. Now, most of your panels and so on will last 20, 25 years.
Right.
So we need to harmonize that, because you don't want, for me in the private sector, if I want to go and put my roof in systems in PV panels and I spend $500,000 or $1 million to do that, the issue is I need to say to my investors and to my board, the legislation supports, the environment supports me recovering that in a particular number of years.
Correct.
So I need surety that the legislation would not give me these uncertainties. So saying to me that, okay, after 15 years I have to go back and the answer may be yes or no. What happens to me as an independent power producer?
Duration.
Correct. And those are things that
so now
we
that you've identified that with the PERC as an opportunity that needs to be sorted out, what have you as private sector done
the Chamber is doing a white paper.
Them?
We have engaged a consultant to do a white paper to look at the whole rules and regulations out of PERC and to suggest to them areas that we think.
All right, that's where we're going. Solutions driven.
Change, yes.
Yeah.
One thing
you have too much problem identifying.
But the thing is, I was just making a point that you're saying, the energy and how how it coalesces
Yes.
and how it harmonizes.
It must.
We must do these little things so that if we want to push
Absolutely.
climate change, and the government has said by 2030, 40% reduction in our emissions through burning of fossil fuels and consumption of using gas, because they say they're going into electric vehicles.
25%.
25%. That's significant.
Help us
next
understand,
year.
help us, any of you, help us, help the general public, and I need some clarification to wrap our heads around how the initiative to reduce the cost on electricity and fuel and some, how it's going to impact, let's say, the Rubises and the Sauls, and how is it going to impact Grenlec as an operation?
Well, Grenlec is going to certainly, obviously, have to reduce some of the calculations, because the environmental levy is not theirs. So when you remove environmental levy and so on, that is basically solid waste.
Solid waste.
Solid
Solid
waste,
waste
yeah.
to get some impact. But remember, solid waste also have environmental levy on imports. And they get a huge chunk of the revenues from there. So I don't know the figures that they get from Grenlec, but I suspect it's significant. So removing it, but it's not removed totally. It's removed on
500
500
Right.
kilowatts.
Right.
So there is still revenues to be gained. So Grenlec, from that point of view, doesn't suffer. I think he mentioned something about the non-fuel charge, where they want to adjust. Now, that will affect Grenlec. Because that speaks to their overheads and how they recover monies to finance their internal operations, salaries, wages, maintenance, so on and so on.
Right.
So that is an area that will obviously, they would have crunched the figures and understood what was happening there.
If you're an employee at Grenlec this morning, how do you internalize that? Not understanding all the dynamics of, so let's say you're there and you're like, what they say there? What going on?
Well, I
what
mean,
happened?
it has to be explained to
how
employees.
do they receive it, and how does it?
I don't think the government wants
because
to.
they need to be able to wrap their heads around it.
I agree, Chris. I mean, fundamentally, you're looking at reduced revenue for Grenlec.
Yeah.
And therefore, as the Minister of Finance was saying, they could only do that. The owners could only do this, and because the government is the owners, they're able to do that. Say,
Right.
look,
So they take a hit.
Precisely. They
Yeah.
take a hit.
What the minister did not say is how long they're doing it for.
Yeah.
And that is important for Grenlec
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And I did say that when you make these changes, it's for how long. The same thing with the gas, fixing of the gas. Was
So there's a modality they need to work out.
You need to say,
we may pick up more details in the debate, in the discussions on the budget.
And for Saul and Rubis and so, how
it's a loan
are they going to be
government.
impacted?
It's really a loan they're given to the government. Because as I said, at $15, when gas comes in at say $17, they have to pay the suppliers at $17.
Correct.
But they can't recover the 17 through the pump. They're recovering only 15. Just speak in general. So the $2 is a loan to government. And that loan is going to be recovered when the price drops below 15.
Exactly.
Right.
So when it drops below 15 and there's a surplus,
now I get it.
then they pay back the loan.
Right.
But additionally,
So that's how
remember the
Because
government.
the thing is, you can't, we're very on the surface. So you hear, it's $15, but listen, it's going to impact, because we often just think about how we getting whatever, but it's going to impact these people
So
who are also employers of Grenadians, and this is also part of their revenue base.
They can't
and so it goes
can't tell the international suppliers they're paying $17.
Absolutely,
they pay whatever the price
absolutely.
is.
So everybody's kind of like giving up something.
But Chris raised an important point earlier on, where he talking about the government will now have in legislation to invoke the escape clause under the fiscal responsibility clause to allow, because the reason seems legitimate given the pandemic, the crisis.
It is more legitimate than ever. It's just important, though, that there's the accountability factor. It becomes stronger.
But you see, this is a budget. I keep saying budgets are not cast in stone.
No, they're projections.
And projections of probably the best case scenario and to some degree worst case scenario. And that's why you need to see the document that speaks to upside and downside risks, where the risks are to these numbers and achieving of these numbers. So revenues, for example, tourism is 50% of our GDP or more. That is extremely high risk.
And volatile.
And let's see what's happening in Omicron.
And volatile at this time.
So if this Omicron thing gets more serious, of course, we don't know a lot about it in terms of severity or not.
Because remember now,
travel from the source markets, Europe, the United States,
Germany,
now
we could report an uptick because of the revenue streams. Hotels like the Calabashes and Sandals and so on are saying, occupancy is high. But in 2 weeks, We're now
budget-
hearing travel bans announced in 2 weeks. That dynamic can change.
Yeah, in other words, because a budget assumes certain assumptions.
That's right.
Based
the
on what's
assumptions
happening at
is
the
that
time, yeah.
the world economy will continue to grow, the pandemic
And
will
the
be
minister
under
spoke
control.
about it in his
Precisely.
thing, and-
This doesn't happen, then you have to relook your budget and your whole
rebalance
stru-
again.
and
The-
rebalance
The,
again.
That is why-
Yeah.
the pandemic is laughing at all economic outlooks.
Seriously.
No government, I keep saying, and we don't say it enough probably,
Seriously.
but no government has an absolute solution to deal with this environment. There is none,
Yeah.
not even businesses.
True.
True,
And
true.
we don't commend our leaders in business and government enough
Yeah.
for all the machinations we have to do, all the
Machinations
things
is
we
the
have
word.
to look at.
Yeah.
We have
Machinations
logistics
is the word.
issues, we have
Yeah.
shipping issues,
Yeah.
we have rising costs. We have a number of things that we
Yeah.
have to look at
Machinations
as a
is the
country
word.
and as businesses
Yeah.
to understand how we play it,
Yeah.
so that we can normalize things for
Yeah,
people
yeah,
as they
yeah,
know it. And it is not an easy thing, and it's not an easy process that we have to look at.
Yeah.
And government more so, because government have all these different pies, different aspects, whether it's education, whether it's security, whether it's agriculture, whether it's
Sure,
health,
it's
whether
enormous.
it's an enormous thing for them, and everybody wants, and every is one pie, and everybody needs to get, and
It's a real difficult time to
yeah, and
be in
we
this,
don't.
yeah,
We
yeah.
sometimes, gloss it over. Our budget had to present it. Yes, some guys had to put together figures. First time we get in a deficit budget. We haven't had a deficit budget in
Budget
years.
alone.
Yeah, correct.
And it speaks to
Brenda, I have a
the
question for
uncertainty and so
their
on.
private sector representative here, Senator Diali.
Sure.
It doesn't have to do with contract workers, but I like the fact that there's a committee that is pursuing some equity with contract workers and
Of
traditional
course,
workers.
that is
Best-
But the question I have for you, Chris,
practice.
that's not the question.
Yeah.
The question I have for Chris, clearly, the Minister of Finance outlined some token of appreciation to certain sector workers and other workers, particularly coming out of the pandemic. But the economic situation. But one of the points he raised is that he encourages the private sector to consider, where possible, some
To do the
sharing,
same.
some support. What would be your advice? Are you going to, where are you taking this?
Well, I mean, some of us in the private sector have profit sharing.
Yeah.
And it's given at the financial year and whether a company makes profit or not. So some workers already have that entitlement once you make profit. So that's one aspect of
Okay.
it, compared to a bonus as what was announced for the frontline workers that government is doing. But there's so much other things companies can do. It doesn't always have to be a bonus payment.
Monetary,
Some of us will do vouchers to our employees, give them, some of us do incentive programs. So we have things set up that, if that happens and you achieve certain things, you get some gift or, there are different things. It does not always have to be something of a monetary award coming to you, and So there are a number of things that I think I will encourage it from the point of view of affordability. Where you are as a private sector company, how can you help?
Yeah.
And sometimes, Brenda, it's just doing a little flower basket with a bottle of wine, and you bring it home to a member of staff who have an ailing mom or ailing dad.
Yeah.
And the company does that, and the boss or the supervisor department goes and say Merry Christmas. We wish you the best. It's the little things.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big thing.
The thoughtfulness.
And that is where I think the minister is
thoughtfulness
coming
of
from.
it,
Yes, yes.
And he did use a caveat. He said, in as far as you can.
Yes.
Yeah, of
He-
course.
And I'm
because
saying-
you know how we get carried away that,
The
they
caveat-
say,
Yeah.
no, they didn't say that. He said he encouraged, the
Yeah,
word
of
used
course.
was encourage,
And I
encouraging
think-
private
I think-
sector in as far as they can.
We just need to get
Because
a little
let's
more
be
personal
real.
and do it.
Let's be real, there are some companies that just cannot.
Cannot. That's
Cannot.
right. Can't.
They are
They
barely
support.
able to keep their doors open
But
and
you
their
know what?
lights on,
A
and
visit,
they cannot.
A visit by the MD or that company or the boss
Yeah.
to the home of the person, just to say Merry Christmas, just bring a card, would probably
Yes.
go so far.
Yes.
True.
Even
Or
though
a
the card
message.
is not much in
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
A nice, thoughtful message,
Yes,
because remember,
you know?
companies and their employees have been through so much this year.
That's right.
You had to talk vaccinations with your staff. You have had to make some difficult decisions regarding who's going to remain on your staff and who's going to be let go. You've had to have conversations with people about so many other things that, probably change the dynamics of the relationship and the company on
is
a
correct.
whole. So it is a really good time to sensitively address some of those things with really great gestures of kindness
I'm
and
not
care.
saying this-
And it doesn't always have to be money.
One of the things I do since this pandemic started is I come out of my office 2-3 times a day and walk my floor.
Yeah.
Not to see what my workers doing or not doing,
To check them.
but just to check, have a chat, what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, some of them might give me a little old talk. You know, it's just to,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just to be
important.
personal
That's important.
and to be there. So
That's
it is
important.
about that. It's
Yeah.
about managing the relationships,
That's
asking them how their
important.
family doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, that kind of little thing. And sometimes we don't understand how far that can go.
Of course.
And it doesn't require us to give anything. It's just give a little of our time.
That's correct.
You know, and do it. And I'm just
So the
saying
most
that.
we can give as human beings is the way we feel about each other, what we
Right.
give to each other
Right.
via
So,
interaction.
As
So
I say to Byron's question there, I think that is a good thing the minister spoke about.
I
It's
think
just
so
that we
too.
need to be creative in how we do it.
How you do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be a monetary thing.
Yeah.
But you know, we could engage, and I think that is important for
Yeah,
us because
I
in
think-
these times, COVID have us depressed, have us anxious,
Yes,
have us
yes.
not sure about the future.
And for all,
you know.
now you're
A lot of
you're
anxiety.
dissecting the figures and the revenues and so
Yeah.
on. But the immediate, the visceral reaction that came when the budget came, it was a kind of feel good sort of thing. It provided some, because I even had to, when I was really engaged on Friday, so I didn't get like everything,
Yeah.
but there was a point when I got some, quite a bit, and look as if it was a time that he had a big, the bag Santas have,
Yeah.
and like that time he was just pulling out
Right,
of that
different.
Santa bag. So I said,
the-
so hear me
The
now.
political people
I
will say
even-
election budget.
Exactly. Election budget.
hear
Election
me now,
budget.
hear me now.
And even though it's an election budget.
I said it loud in my office.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, Santa passing up there. And then I put it on Facebook. But anyway, jokes aside, I think, there is sometimes when we get into the deep intellectual, analysis of the state of our country and, how we feel about the politics and governance and so on, we often forget that there are hundreds, even thousands of Grenadians that all they want is what was announced on Friday.
Yeah,
and we seem to forget those
Yeah.
things. And that is what,
Possibility of relief.
that is
Yeah.
what.
The possibility of a little more money in my
Yeah,
hand.
yeah.
I could buy a toy for
Yeah.
my daughter and my son.
Yeah.
Not even a toy, a shoes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for them, and we sometimes don't understand the effect of these
No,
things,
because we
but
don't.
It is there, and that is,
Yeah.
all governments are tasked with that. But of course,
They
there are
must.
limits to how far you can
Yeah,
bring it.
they
Byron.
must understand
The $150 increase on the seed program, that is going to be significant for some
Of
people.
course,
lot,
yes.
No, not all of them will take it and drink rum, but
Yeah.
some will.
Yeah.
But the mothers, the ladies among us, and those who
They would
normally
control
see
it.
about
They
the
would
household
control
will
this. They
control
would
it.
control
So,
this, yeah.
it sounds small, but for some people,
It's
there is a
significant.
difference between significant things for their family. So,
You see, a lot of us don't know how to empathize
Yeah.
because, if it never hits my door, I really don't see it. And that's something we have to try to
Yeah,
get out of. And I think a lot of the things we have gone through with COVID should really help us along
Yeah,
that path.
yeah.
It doesn't mean because you're not experiencing it that it's not happening.
Yeah, yeah.
What doesn't mean anything to you? What is a big, why did I do that? Yada, yada, yada. Hello,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
somebody across the way
Yeah.
that needs that.
Yeah, but as Chris said, I think the
Yeah.
details would come in the peripheral documents, and I look forward to that and the further discussions on it.
Yeah, well,
and
I
I
have
think
my
also,
work
Chris,
also-
I mean, you guys do a really good job
I
at
look
the,
forward
at the
to-
Senate level, the
Yeah,
discussion
yeah,
there, debate
yeah.
there. So I look forward to this. This is going to happen in the next week, Chris?
They start
Well,
today.
our-
The
yeah,
representative
our-
starts today.
our
So
session
it should be
starts on
the-
the 15th, I think.
15th.
of December.
Okay, to
the
finish
rep-
before
And ours will
Christmas.
It's a
normally run
week
for about
after.
3
It's a
days.
week after the
3 days.
representatives.
Okay.
Yeah, the
But this is-
representatives start today. So I
Today.
think it should be the leader of the opposition, I do believe.
Oh, first.
Okay, so
Okay.
Mr. Clement, good morning. I
Good.
hope you leave your chains at home today.
I am
Just
certain,
free of
Byron,
yourself.
that this is going to be my last budget debate, I believe.
You think
the
so?
Prime Minister calls elections in 2022.
Or you believe he's going to call election in 2020?
I
But
said
he
if he
hasn't.
does, if he does.
Okay.
Oh, because then you would dissolve the parliament,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
This will be my last.
Well,
budget
let's see what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Last week he did, with a twinkle in his eye,
Yeah.
say, "Well,
He
you
ain't
know,
going to
I
the
am
end."
not one that
Yeah.
usually go to the
End, yeah.
He
That's
didn't
the
just say
message.
it, you know. He had a twinkle in the eye. He had a twinkle in the eye.
he just called
As
it in
if he,
2022.
at the time, I started watching him, because if he eased off the chair, he probably had it in his back pocket. I don't know.
So it's
But
gonna
anyway, he
be
did have a
interesting.
twinkle in his
Yeah,
eye.
yeah, yeah.
He did say
That might be my
he's
last
normally
argument.
not
Yeah.
one to go all the way
Yeah.
with it. So I think it might be prudent to suspect
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it may happen at some point next
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, and that will be my last.
But Chris, you continue to
do.
do very good work there in the Senate, representing the private sector. So it's premature to say that, Chris.
No. I'm quite clear, Byron. If God blesses me with health and strength, that this is my last stint in
Okay,
the Senate.
it's a
I
statement.
am going to be there for at least 15 years, almost 15 years, based on
15
when they
years.
call it.
Okay.
It's time for me to move on and get other
Okay.
young, bright,
Yeah.
energetic senators in the seat.
Okay.
I'm sure they're anxious to get in there. Let's hope they're anxious to do the work you did.
As well.
Yes, we are normally very anxious about a lot of things until we understand what comes with. So don't say that just yet, okay? All right, you don't say that at all. You don't make any pronouncements on yourself just yet.
Oh, well.
But it's great that you have served for a long time, and you have served extremely well. And now we probably need you to serve
Thank
in
you very
other
much for that.
areas,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And he's not running for nothing. Okay, leave him alone. He's not in
How
the
you know, Brenda?
constituency.
Brenda,
No,
how you know?
I know that. I know. We have these conversations.
Oh,
Yeah. But that is absolutely right. The only thing I run for is for Judy.
Brenda, they don't usually
I hope.
say this in advance, you know.
No, well, I could say in advance. I could say in advance.
Yes, there are other ways. There
Okay,
are
of
other
course,
ways to
of
serve. There are
course,
other
of
ways,
course.
and Senator Diali, I think you are a multifaceted and talented individual that you can do so much more,
Absolutely.
than just stand up in the Senate and sometimes beat
That's
your
why we
head
have
against
him
a
here with
wall.
us sometimes.
So
I am anxious
Yeah.
to see our climate change agenda.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
think
maybe
that
we
is
should
critical.
trust you there, because I believe with
Yeah.
your knowledge with the energy
Yeah.
and the climate.
So,
Yeah,
that's something
let's find some work for you to
I
do.
want to
Yeah.
see materialize
more
with
work, more
boots
more
on the
work,
ground. and,
more.
Yeah.
so that is an area I have great interest in for the next couple of years to see what
It has
happens.
a lot of implications on the future.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I do as
For
well.
now.
It's a passion of mine.
Yeah.
Since I was a young child, I've always
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that I didn't understand what it was, but I remember I always had a problem with people cutting
Yeah.
down trees to build houses in the hills.
Yeah, so
I
it's-
always had
it's
that
an area
issue
that's,
because I think during geography, when I understood why rain falls, why we have the trees, why we have leaves, I was like, so why are we doing this? I never knew at that point that we were really endangering ourselves. Now,
I
here
mean,
we
Byron can tell
are.
you,
So-
the last couple of weeks, the place was so dry.
Dry, yeah.
You know, you thought it was
Dry
in dry
season,
season
yes.
already.
And November should be one of the wettest
Wettest
months of the
And,
year.
you know, we
Yes.
haven't had the significant
No, we
rainfall.
haven't.
So, you know, there's a lot of things happening in climate that
Yeah.
you need to pay
Yeah.
attention.
And you need heavy rains now, so if you
Yes.
accumulate for the
right,
dry
that's
season,
right.
if you're not having that now,
That's right. I mean,
You
Nawasa
could
announced, you know, the
project
desal
what's
plants
happening.
in Pitimatnik and Karaku will be fully functional for the dry season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Giving them more
Nawasa
capacity,
really
but-
need to be commended as a really,
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
good
yeah.
run.
You know,
public
Nawasa is
company.
rated as one of the best run water utility in the world. I don't
the
know if
world?
you guys know that, yes.
Wow.
When we went to make the presentation at the Green Climate Fund, we were rated in the top 5 run
Fantastic.
water utilities in the
Jeez,
world.
yeah.
We don't blow our trumpet,
yeah.
but that is a big thing for us.
Listen, we have one of the brightest
Let's
Grenadians
cel-
at the head of
let's celebrate
Nawasa,
that, you know?
Christopher
Yeah,
Husband. So that's a big
celebrate
deal.
that,
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, the board and everybody, the
Yeah.
employees in that authority,
Yep.
they all,
Good.
you know,
Kudos.
fully
Great job.
engaged.
Yeah.
So we don't mention it, so I can mention it for them. I'm no longer the
Yeah,
director, so I
yeah,
can go
yeah.
to
You need to
trumpet.
mention.
I know everybody in Grenada just keep quiet. Just keep quiet about the
No,
wrong
we need to talk about
things.
about the negative things, but
Look at all those-
this is a big deal.
Big deal, because
Yeah.
when you watch
Yeah.
water authorities
Yeah.
in the region and the corruption and so on
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
on,
yeah,
and in the
yeah.
different
Listen, we were
islands.
watching the news the other night, and they showed the factory in
Yeah.
St. Andrew in the constituency of Minister Kate Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
where they were doing the sewing and all of that kind of thing. My sister was like, Brenda, that happening in Grenada? I'm like, yeah. She like, so how people saying? I said, yes, it happened here. She said, wow. She was impressed.
Let's change the conversation.
Yeah.
Make it positive.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Especially in this environment.
Yes.
Exactly,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
But before we go though, the budget is presented by the minister and he gets all the credit for the presentation. Oh, he did a great job.
He
did a really good job.
It's
He
not
was
easy to stand up
commanding.
and present for that.
Yes,
hour and a half.
his presentation style was better than last year. You know,
More confidence there, yeah.
we missed Dr. Mitchell last year, but
and
Mr. Bay
kudos.
was his first time last year. But this time, I mean, he scored high on presentation. He was very, very, very fluent,
electronic-
eloquent.
the
The
electronic
electronic, it worked. It was a bit noisy visually. So
Yeah,
going
yeah,
forward, they
yeah,
have to
yeah.
try to work it with
Yeah.
their visual
Yeah.
people.
The song was
Because while it might look appealing to them, the background was just a little busy.
Okay.
So that is very, very important because I do my artwork and, oh, that look good, boy.
Yeah.
But then when it gets to TV or wherever, it transmits a different way. So if there's any criticism, it's just that. Next time, just deal with the people.
Yeah.
But the folks at the Ministry of Finance,
Yeah.
the
That's what I'm
permanent
saying.
secretary and his team, they are the ones. They are the ones responsible. The late nights, the long days, putting the presentation together, taking all the extra words, taking all the extra, they should be the one. And for our professional public servants who put this together, kudos to you. Congratulations. Well done.
Yep.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
That's our perspectives.
Thank you, Brenda.
What are you doing this week? I always want to know what you're going to do.
Yeah, working hard at Sissons. Getting everything
Listen,
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
listen, they have a fella in Tantine Terrace since I'm going to high school. Every time he see me, good looks at last.
Yeah.
They're walking into work. I hear, hey, good looks at last. I look, I see him. Sissons, good looks at last.
Joy and color.
Joy and color.
I don't forget that.
Joy and color. Mr. Campbell, what are you
If
doing
I
this week?
promote this, I'll get some.
No, you don't get nothing.
Are you coming up in your garden to see what I get?
You don't get nothing.
Okay.
I
What are
see
you
what
doing
orange
this
you have
week?
at various time. I know you don't have much skin insect.
Why are you keeping us away from the farm?
Yeah, the
I'm
skin
coming out
You
of
think we're
forage.
going to blight the fruits or something?
No, the scale insect is more than that. I mean, a number of things. Just briefly, Brenda, the scale insects suck on the sap of the tree, pulling out the nutrients, but also it secrete a sugary substance that
Encourages
is
the ants.
creating, attract ants and create a blight on the tree. So the tree is unable to adequately photosynthesize. So that's one. So it's energy, and therefore you see a reduction in production significantly.
Significant,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it is
And the
something.
fruits are smaller as well.
Fruits are small. So so it is something. I'm pleased that some priority is being given to this, and my recent discussion there indicated that so far they've been focused on the chemical control,
Right.
using insecticides and other, but
Okay.
now they are looking at
Natural.
natural beneficial insect or
Predators.
predators. So biological control. I believe that the biological control, given the spread of the insect, is probably going to have the best impact.
Impact,
Yeah.
okay.
But this week, focus my staff in professional development. This is always very important.
Important,
So
yeah.
we have some of this going, and also implementation. Always trying to get the most possible
it's-
before the end of the year.
for me, it's
And you
end of-
have also like in the BNTF program where you must spend. These are grant financing. You must spend it before the end of the year. So there's a rush to
Okay.
ensure that your procurement is efficient, so you get all your
So that happens.
spending in,
My thing
purchases
is,
in
end of
before.
year for me, financial year, and
Yeah.
I'm seriously into planning for the first quarter of next year.
yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
We've done that since in August,
Yeah.
September,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we
We are
yes.
at that
Constant,
time.
Constant.
Yeah.
But still
Yeah.
find a time, is this a season of
Season.
goodwill?
Yeah.
So find a little time for good for
Absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah.
And dance.
More important, yes.
And that's
Dancing, you release a kind of energy, kind of hormonal thing that's, yeah.
I can't swim like you, but I'm gonna dance.
You can dance. Okay.
I'm a swimmer.
Yeah.
I'm a dancer too.
Yeah,
I'm a
swim, but not
I'm
avid
a
swimmer like
I'm a
Barry,
Okay.
so
swimmer.
we'll
Okay.
dance.
Swimmer does a world of good for me. Swimming does a world of good for me.
So,
That's our program. Thanks, everyone. Have a really, really, really good Monday. Whatever you do today, keep it positive. Try to keep your cup full and overflowing with good thoughts, that is, even if it might be empty materially. How you make yourself feel and feel it transmits. And that's all the time we have with you. I'd like to thank Nazim Benjamin for our professional streaming services. Blondell George was a director, and Colin Dragon, our camera person this morning. For Richie Oliver, our executive producer, all the entities who brought us this morning, MTV, On Air, Online, Mikey Live, TNR Communications, KG9, Party Grenada, and of course, Sister Isle in Carriacou. For Perspectives, until next Monday, I am Brenda Batiste. Bye-bye.